everyone, I'm Dr. Z. I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in transgender care. Welcome to my channel. Sorry for the camera, I'm sitting in front of a window and it's very bright at times and it's giving me this glow, glow if you will. So I'm going to be a little bit angelic being for all of you today. I wanted to share with you my motivational tip, if you will, on helping you how you can actually stop listening to other people, other people's opinions, other people's thoughts, other people's 2 cents, if you will, not only on your gender identity, but also on what you need to do with your gender identity. And I want to tell you a metaphor, use or explain to you a metaphor that hopefully will help you see what you're doing when you try to listen to other people, when you try to listen to so many voices. Because you see, when we navigate our life, what we essentially do is we tend to, as we go along, as we decide to do things, in your case, it will be deciding on gender transition, maybe deciding on starting hormones, maybe deciding on coming out, maybe it's deciding on your preferred name and pronouns. What you're doing when you're making the decisions in relationship to your true self, to your authentic self, you're really writing your story. Everything in life that we do is really truly a story. It's one big story, and your whole life is one fat book, and every day you're writing a chapter or an element of a chapter in that fat book. Everything is a story. Right now, me telling you this is part of my story. You watching this is part of your story. When you tell people about your gender, that is also your part story. Everything we do, we tell stories. We're storytellers of our lives. And it's really important as storytellers of our lives to also have an ownership of our stories, to have complete sense of ownership of our story script. I want you to think about your story as not only just the stories that you're writing of your life, but also as the stories that you're writing that eventually is going to become a movie. It's going to become a film that everybody's going to watch. Imagine in the end of your life, everybody's sitting in a movie theater and they get to watch the story of Dr. Z written on life. Let's massage our egos a little bit and indulge in the concept that everybody's going to watch our story and feel. I think it's a beautiful concept. So if you think about it in that way, the ownership becomes very essential. Here's why. When you're listening to others around you, when you're constantly listening to these people over here telling you that you can't possibly be transgender because you don't have memories of you as a child having dysphoria, and this person over here telling you can't possibly be trans because you're not trans enough. And then you get on social media and you're seeing some people in social media also claiming that you can't be transgender, and they give you all of these reasons. When you're listening to so many people and then you're also incorporating their feedback because you're not listening to your true authentic self, what you're literally doing is you're taking your story. And every time you listen to somebody else and you take in their feedback without actually considering if their feedback is valuable, you're basically giving them your script and you're saying, I give you penmanship over my script. Go ahead and write down, how do you think this chapter should go? And then you take the script, then you go to somebody else. So you go to your parents and you say, hey, mom and dad, do you think I'm transgender? I know I'm an adult and I should be able to make decisions for myself. But do you remember when I had this history or not? And when you overly incorporate their feedback. Now, don't get me wrong. It's good to seek information and advice, but you have to be prudent and you have to be discerning about what advice you're getting. When you just blindly follow everybody's advice, you're giving them the story and they write down the next chapter. And so you're constantly walking your life, giving off your story, your book, to hundreds and hundreds of people around you, to friends and families, and they all write what they think you should be, how they think you should be, how they assume and think and believe you should behave and look and present yourself. And as they write, it becomes a complete mess of a story. Because you've given up your ownership. You did not own your true story. In the end of the day, you're gonna go into movie theater. Again, we're indulging our ego in the concept that in the end of the day, somebody's gonna want to watch autobiographical story of our lives. I think it's, who doesn't want a little bit of fame, right? So, in the end of the day, you're going and you're gonna be sitting in a movie theater, and everybody else is gonna come along. People who know you, people who didn't know you, yourself included. And now you're watching a movie of the story. What do you think it's going to look like? I think it's going to be one fucked up film, pardon my French, but I think it's going to be a pretty messed up story. Most likely I'm going to want to walk out and ask a refund on my movie ticket. Most likely everybody else is going to not want to sit through the story. Why? Because it's a story written of thousands of people and their projective perception of how they see you. It's not a story of how you see yourself. It's not a story of who you are. It's not a story of what you want to do or who you want to be. It's not a story of your gender. It's a story of how everybody else sees your gender. It's a story of how everybody else sees your gender identity and what they think you should be doing in regards to your gender identity. This is why you need to stop and learn how not to listen to everybody else. Big difference between asking people for their feedback. It's a big difference about seeking advice, right? You watching this content right now is your way of seeking for advice. It's your way of also allowing me to write something in your story. What I'm hoping you do is when you listen to me, you exercise your discernment. I'm hoping you're not just, spoon feeding yourself my content. I'm hoping you're also utilizing your sense of agency. And you're able to discriminate. This makes sense. This resonates. This is hitting me right here in my heart. This feels right. Then take it. If it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't resonate, if it feels falsy, walk away from it. So again, it's really good to go and to seek people, right? We seek people to give us feedback all the time. Professionals, we go to medical doctors, people come to me to seek advice, to affirm for them or disaffirm that they do have gender dysphoria, to help them figure out what to do. They trust my advice, right? That's a lot of accountability there in my hands. They trust with what I think, and yet they still have to also utilize their discernment. They still have to also see what feels right for them, and I need to encourage that in them. But a lot of people are not going to encourage a discernment inside of you, so you have to trust your voice. So I want you to start seeing your life as a story. Stop listening to everybody else and what they have to say about your gender. Another way to look at it is, unless those people who are telling you about gender are somewhat experts, well, nobody can really be expert in a gender, but somewhat more experienced in gender, right? I think I probably have more validity if I were to sit down with you over several sessions in terms of what's going on with you than, for example, even people in your lives who known you for far longer, because I have way more experience with gender issues than they have. So be able to discern who you listen to. Own your ownership of your story. Be careful who you give your pen to. Every time you listen to everybody else's opinion of who you are, especially on social media, especially those people who don't know at all who you are. People such as, really, I have people comment on my YouTube. Imagine if I listen to everybody's comments. Some comments are just plain silly. Imagine if I listen coming from Johnny Belly Up 2975. Who is that person even exists? I don't even know that person. Don't give your penmanship. Do not give your ownership of who you are to anybody. Now, you may not be able to do anything about who you are, or who you believe you are, or who you think you are, or who you want to be, or how you want to express and how you want to see yourself. You may not be ready to do anything about it. You may not have resources to do anything about it. You may not be in the right state of mind. You may not be in the right circumstances right now. It doesn't matter. Own it. Own ownership over how you're going to write what's going to happen next in the next chapter. Even if the next chapter is for the next year, I'm unable to do anything. Write it yourself. Don't let anybody else write it for you. Invite people to be participants in your story, but never invite them to take over your story. Never invite them to knock you off your feet as protagonist and become the protagonist of a story. This is the power of ownership of our lives. This is the power of ownership of your story. And I want you to be able to live with it. I want you to be able to remember your pen. Your pen is your power. Your pen is your will. Your pen is your decision in making. Whose advice you're going to take in. And how you're going to exercise your agency in being able to discriminate what is a valid advice, what is not valid. But stop listening to everybody else. Stop listening to so many. If I listened to so many people in the beginning when I started creating this content, and I was getting so many, I can't even tell you, so many lacking common sense commentary about gender and stuff. If I listened to it and let it get to me, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. You would not be listening to me right now if I gave them this pen. If I gave them this pen, and if I allowed them to write my content for me, you would not be watching this because it would be shit. But I keep ownership. I decide what to create on this channel. I listen to all of you. I ask all of you for feedback all the time, don't I? I recently just did, should I do motivational? Should I just add extra videos? What do you guys think? Everybody gave feedback. I listened to it. But I'm still going to have to decide which one of those feedbacks works best for me, because I have to be the one who's writing my story. So remember your pen. Remember your ownership. Stop listening to everybody else. Start discriminating and discerning who you're going to listen to and own your story. Comment below. Let me know. Has it been difficult for you to own your story? Has it been difficult for you to have ownership? Is it still difficult for you to have ownership? Do you want to have ownership of your story? What would it look like for you to start taking ownership of your story? What do you have to do in your life right now to start owning your own script? Because guess what? I want to read your book. Everybody else, I guarantee you, people who really care about you, I guarantee you they want to read your book. Nobody wants to read a messed up version of 100 voices who don't even know you to begin with. So again, stop listening to everybody else and start listening to yourself. And I talk to you all next time. Bye.